I am Travius Stewart, and I want to help you move past barriers and obstacles that are preventing you from getting what you want in life. This is Breakthrough. Yo, what's up, my peeps? Happy Podcast Tuesday. So, I hope you all are doing fantastic. I wish there was a way that I could check in with you, like how you doing today, high five you, that kind of thing. But I would like to think, and it helps me honestly stay motivated, that I feel like I'm talking to one person at a time, and I feel like I'm having a conversation with one person at a time. So I hope you're feeling good. I hope you're having a fantastic week on this Podcast Tuesday, October 10th. So today, what I'm diving into is a topic that is a bit of a continuation from last week's about values. And are your values your values? Actually your values. And so today I want to talk about what happens when you actually have conflicting values in your relationships, like with your significant other, because so many times, when many people are in the dating phase of their relationships, unless you have been around the block before, unless, you have been told to do these things, most people don't know to do this. But one of the things that's important to do is to align, well, before you align, but to share what the most important things are to you. What are your values? Because sometimes we get into relationships with other people and we're like, the chemistry is really, really great. They communicate really, really well. We're compatible. Those are the 3 C's, right? But what happens if you have conflicting values? And so this warrants, and it's worth a great conversation to know early on, And so I want to talk about this issue because this can stir up some pretty intense emotions. It can raise some tough questions, especially if it's something that you haven't talked about in the very, very beginning. And we don't want to wait until, we're in love, we've set a date, we're married with kids. And now the secret, the elephant in the room really comes out. And now we're like, what do we do now? Are we too far gone? And so as I dive into it, I want to talk about, there's so many times when we think all that matters is love. Love is blind. And to some extent, that can be true for some people. But what happens when that freshness wears off? When, it's like, let's look at the day-to-day now. Because when you first fall in love with someone, everything seems perfect. Again, they're so good to talk to. We have, hot chemistry. We can't keep our hands off of each other. We're compatible, because we sort of, were raised in the same area, whatever that looks like for you as far as compatibility. And so, in the very beginning, we have those butterflies in our stomach and we just can't imagine a future without that special someone by your side. Oh man, I see you in my life for the rest of your life. But as time goes on and the honeymoon phase fades and, it's less intense, it's less exciting. That's when, if you haven't done this work before, that you start to notice that there's some differences in your values and what is really important to you and what makes life really worth living to you. That could be different from your partner. Now, these differences, they can manifest in various ways. It could start off with disagreements on day-to-day decisions, simple stuff as, clashing on where and when to put the dishes, right? Or it could be big life choices, like how are we going to raise our kids, if there are kids involved. It could be something as mundane as how you spend your weekends, because you might have some things that you want to do and your partner's like, no, I thought my weekends were just, for me, whatever that is. Or it could really have something to do with your outlook on family, religion. even politics. And I've known, personally, some relationships that ended over political differences because this was a conversation that these people didn't have, when everything was good, when they first started out, and then the political differences really surface, and then also in that picture are finances. If we are not aligned and one person doesn't go to the other side, this also can cause some very, very conflicting problems in a relationship, in a marriage. So I want you to think about, picture this, right? This story, it's a couple, they're deeply in love, and we're going to call them Alex and Sarah, right? Sarah is a devout follower of her faith. She is a Christian. She goes to church, every Sunday regularly. Sometimes she throws in a Wednesday. She participates in, community events. And so basically her faith is probably the most important thing to her. Alex, on the other hand, is a staunch atheist. Now, these are probably the two most extreme, opposite ends of the spectrum. But, Alex believes in reason. Alex believes in science. Alex has a secular worldview. Alex doesn't get on his knees and pray for things. And in the beginning, we can blow those things off and go, this may not be a big deal. We love each other and we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it, because we respect each other's differences as just being different. But as time goes on, Alex and Sarah began to realize that their values were starting to clash in significant ways. Well, you see, Sarah wanted to raise her children in the church, while Alex felt uncomfortable with the idea of religious education. They started to have debates. They were fighting on whether or not to go to church on Wednesday when, their kid wanted to go to soccer practice, and Sarah wanted them to go to church. And then what also begins to surface is, well, what do we do when we spend time over the holidays? Let's say it's Thanksgiving, and, we as in Alex and Sarah have decided that they're going over to Sarah's family, and Sarah's family prays before they eat. Everybody, circles up and holds hands, and everybody prays before. Well, Alex is an atheist, and Alex has probably done these things. He's probably closed his eyes, held hands for the first couple of years. But now he's like, you know what? I'm feeling some kind of way about this because this does not align with my beliefs. And so what does that look like when you go over to Alex's side of the family, who they're not Christians, they don't pray. And so where do you draw the line as far as, is this always going to be a huge place of differences in our lives? Because now we're beginning to look at, what is the emotional toll? What is the emotional toll? Because we have huge conflicting values. And so one of the things I want to talk about is the emotional significant, fallout from having these conflicting, these values. So the emotional toll that it can take on your relationship. And so it can feel like you're constantly at odds with each other. Every disagreement, no matter if you're talking about the dishes or putting gas in the car, no matter how small, can turn into a battle of principles, which turns out to be just exhausting. And then we put that problem up on the shelf. We're not going to talk about it. And then one day, we keep piling and putting things on the shelf, and that shelf falls down, and then it all comes out, And when we feel like we can't talk about it, this leads to resentment over time. If your values clash too often, it's possible you can find yourself harboring feelings of frustration, anger towards your partner. And remember those times when you were so in love, but now we're harboring frustration and anger? You might even start to question whether you're truly compatible. Remember, the chemistry was great. We talk so well with each other, but now we have this big religious difference. And now you're wondering if your relationship can withstand these differences. And so the challenge becomes, do we compromise? Do we compromise something that's very, very important? Or do we acquiesce? Do we stand firm? Because we all know that in relationships, in healthy relationships, compromise is essential. But guys, when your values don't align, even then it can be challenging to find compromise and that middle ground, because this can lead one or even both parties feeling like they've given up a part of themselves and who they believe themselves to be. And that's when the resentment builds up. We keep things to ourselves, and then we go outside possibly to find ways to, connect with that part of our lives again. And so conflicting values, it can lead to emotional disconnection, where we feel like we're growing apart emotionally. We used to connect deeply, but now we feel like we're drifting apart because we can't talk about everything anymore. Sometimes it leads to frequent arguments. You find yourself arguing over the same issue repeatedly. And then we leave things unresolved. We can't find a resolution, a solution to it. So we just go, well, let's just agree to disagree. And then it begins again. You sacrifice who you are, your authenticity, what is really, really important to you. You sacrifice your true self or your true beliefs to avoid those conflicts. And so I want you to think about all the things that I've said today, because we've spent some time, the last 10 minutes or so, exploring how often challenging conflicting values within a relationship can be. And even if it's something like, the big elephant in the room, religion, what if it's a political difference? What if, one person's a Democrat and the other person's a Republican? How do you manage that? What if one person's active, the other person is a homebody, and then the other person who's active is doing all these physical feats going all around the world? And I'm not saying that you and your partner have to do every single thing together, but I know for me, it's important that the things that bring me value also is valuable to Shelly. Now, we don't completely 100% align with our values because some things are in different order. But one of the things that's important to both of us is that where we spend our free time, our weekends, those things align. And you guys hear me talk about pickleball all the time, right? And we love to go out and play pickleball. There's lots of things that we talk about that we have talked about from day one, that we know we have alignment with these values. We know these things are important. And so I want you to think about your relationship, whether it's you have differing beliefs about religion, your financial priorities, maybe environmental concerns, some things that you were raised with, growing up with your family. And are these differences significantly impacting your relationship? And so, as challenging as they may be, they don't have to end the relationship. But you do need to talk about it. You do need to find common ground. And if you can't find common ground, then maybe it's time to seek a therapist. Seek a coach who can help you find common ground. If you want to do all you can do to save the relationship. This can be an opportunity for growth, for understanding, for compromise. But first of all, identifying the signs of conflicting values, like frequent arguments, emotional distance between one another. We're putting things on the shelf. And then we're just not talking about all the things we used to talk about. We have unresolved disagreements. Can be the first step towards you noticing and addressing these issues. So the question that I want to leave you with as I end this conflicting values in a relationship episode, how can you and your partner turn your differing values into an opportunity for a stronger, more resilient, and more understanding, aligned relationship? All right, my peeps, I would love to know if what I talked about today resonated with you in any way. Just shoot me an email at travia@traviastewart.com, and I would love to start a dialogue with you. All right, I hope you're having a a most fantastic day, whatever day you are listening to this podcast and finding value. And if you're finding value, I would love it if you could share with someone else who you think could find value. Maybe you have a buddy, a friend who is like, oh my God, she is talking about my two best friends and they need to hear this episode. So I would appreciate it if you would share it with someone else who you believe will find value. All right, my peeps, have a most beautiful rest of your week, and we'll talk again next week.